So thank you. I'm Nguyen. I'm founding president of the Bitcoin Association, which is a global industry organization we formed to advance the original vision of Bitcoin in the form of Bitcoin SV, to truly fulfill Craig's vision of Bitcoin being used by billions of people around the world and by the world's major enterprises. Our vision is so grand that it really is like the tagline of the Metanet Society here, let's change the world. We do want to transform technology in the world in ways people can't even imagine. I was fortunate to get out of law school in the mid-1990s, right at the time of the internet boom. And a lot of you students here probably don't remember that, or remember that only faintly. But that was an exciting time. It was a time when this thing called email was emerging. Ooh, exciting. Internet browsers, websites, and companies were afraid of it. People didn't know what to do with it. But today, we cannot imagine a life without the internet. The internet is something that truly changed the world. And there's an opportunity now to work in a field where you can truly change the world again with Bitcoin and this broader concept of the Metanet. So I was fortunate to have had a very long legal career in the intellectual property and digital technology field. So I spent 2 decades helping companies navigate all of the business and legal issues they confronted as they learned to operate on the internet and digital technologies, on e-commerce, and then social media emerged, and then peer-to-peer file sharing technology emerged, all kinds of things that changed the face of what we know and really changed the future. So for all of you bright minds here at Cambridge, I would pose to you this question. Do you just want to study something and research something because it's interesting? Or do you want to work on something that can truly change the world? And that is not an understatement. And I want to spend my time with you tonight explaining why. And explaining why what we are doing and what is coming out of Craig's vision, nChain, and our allies across the world really will be transformative. And it is, for once, when you hear about these things, not hyperbole. So let's talk about what Bitcoin was originally designed to be. Robin showed you the cover of the Bitcoin white paper, and it birthed to the world this idea of a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system, a new form of value transfer where you didn't need to trust intermediaries, banks, payment processors, to create a more efficient monetary system, one that was more honest, and that is really critical to the Bitcoin vision. If you actually go read the Bitcoin white paper, it uses the word honest 15 times because its magic was trying to create a system where you could transfer Bitcoin value but not need someone in the middle. And that relied upon creating a blockchain, a distributed ledger in which numerous nodes around the world, computing nodes, kept the same ledger. And it's a ledger that's open, accessible to anyone, meaning anyone can verify and review the transactions. And honesty is so key to what Bitcoin was designed to do. But it was designed to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Bitcoin should be used easily, cheaply, fastly in our day-to-day lives. That's what cash is. And if you create an electronic cash system, you want a system like that. For that to happen, Bitcoin's technology, its platform, blockchain, needed to scale big. Because why would you create the design for a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system and keep it small? Keep it so only certain people, crypto hobbyists, use it. You wouldn't do that. That's not what Satoshi's design was. But unfortunately, that is what has happened over the course of the 10+ year history of Bitcoin. The blocks that form the blockchain were not allowed to escape in terms of unlimited power. They were artificially restricted by the protocol developer group that took over BTC, the ticker symbol that is used to trade what people think is Bitcoin, but has seriously deviated from the Satoshi vision of what Bitcoin was supposed to be. And that has not allowed Bitcoin, as I'll explain tonight, to achieve its greater purpose. Craig designed Bitcoin to be more than just a money system. Its blockchain and technology has the capacity to combine 2 main features. The internet birthed to the world a protocol and a system to transmit data, email, data that leads to serving a website, social media information. And that's really powerful. But on the internet, if you want payments, you needed some layer on top of the internet, a payment processing tool, for example, a widget onto a website. So internet technology birthed data transmission that was worldwide. And Bitcoin, people think, was designed to create a protocol to transform payments. Well, Craig's bigger concept is this thing called the Metanet, which is the namesake of this Metanet society. So what is that? It is a protocol, a design, a system to combine the two functions that Bitcoin's blockchain can provide: payments, but as well as the transmission of data. Because the Bitcoin blockchain, in order to transmit what is value, really just transmits information. And its ability to do that allows you to combine both payments and data into a single native transaction and rethink what Bitcoin is. Because think about it, the word Bitcoin, bit, represents data and coin represents money. It's the combination of both into one system, the ability to combine data and monetary value in one native transaction, in one protocol, in one design, and in all of the technology applications that will be built in the future. And so what does that mean in practical terms? It means the ability, as Craig says all the time, to create a new, more commercial internet. And a more commercial internet, not necessarily for the big companies and service providers that provide you the services you think about today, but a new, more commercial internet for you, the users of the internet, so that your data has more value that you can manage and control, so that your online interactions, when you like a tweet, when you post an Instagram picture, when you engage on review sites, have value that can be monetized and expressed through this concept of the Metanet. The Metanet is a protocol as well as a framework for structuring as well as facilitating on-chain internet. And it's only possible on the BSV blockchain, as we're going to describe. It uses the same data structure of Bitcoin's blockchain to combine those two functions. There's a lot more complexity to that. And luckily, you have here some of the N-Chain team that works with Craig, including Jack Davies, one of the researchers, who was really responsible for designing the protocol that we have released to the world so the developers can build on a Metanet system. So the Metanet paradigm is somewhat rather simple. It's taking the idea that the blockchain itself is a universal server. So think about it. The blockchain for Bitcoin is a ledger kept by computing nodes all around the world that anyone can access and draw data from. That means it acts as a universal server that can also serve web data, email data that you can pull from the blockchain. So think about it. Data, websites, as well as other content can be hosted on the blockchain and pulled from the blockchain so that everyone can contribute, but then also people can specialize in different particular functions. So it's a protocol to create data structure over the Bitcoin blockchain. So as examples of things you can do for the blockchain, on the right side, a representation of the blockchain, heights of blocks. You could have data storage. You could create a new form of search engine that doesn't search the internet, but searches the blockchain for data that is stored on there that you could then serve, let's say, onto websites or transmit by email or through other means. This can power applications as well as a whole new wave of identity management that we're seeing on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. As an example, the Chief Technology Officer at N-Chain, Steve Shatters, who I work with quite closely, discovered something earlier this year. He lifted the cap on the data size for one of the fields in the Bitcoin scripting language, op return, that allowed people to add more data so that when I send Shem here, for example, a Bitcoin transaction, I could attach monetary value to it, let's say 0.1 Bitcoin. But within the transaction itself that gets put into the Bitcoin blockchain, I can insert data, content, information. And once Steve figured out a good way to lift the cap that had been placed on the size of data by the BTC developer groups to increase it, people learned all kinds of powerful new ways to take advantage of that to provide much more data usage to the Bitcoin blockchain. So he did a test. He took the entire text of the book Alice in Wonderland, the whole text in a text file, and he inserted it with a Bitcoin transaction on the BSV blockchain. Then Unwriter, who is a mysterious yet highly prolific developer developing some of those amazing tools in the BSV blockchain, saw them and went, oh my gosh, I can do something with that. So he put up this. This was a mock website at the URL you could see up there that is the world's first, we believe, serverless website a website you could access on the internet without a server. He put up a picture and has the entire text of the book that was available because he pulled all of the text for the book to display on a website from a single Bitcoin transaction that lives on the BSV blockchain. And anyone can do it. It's a transformative way to think about how the Bitcoin blockchain can power and subsume the entire internet. And that leads to all kinds of other things. So why is this possible only on the Bitcoin SV blockchain? Why hasn't this happened before? If Bitcoin's been around for over 10 years, why is this happening now? It's because we had to fight protocol battles and protocol wars and the world's first Bitcoin hash war last year to preserve the original design, protocol, and massive scaling vision of Bitcoin. What Craig planned and foresaw many, many years ago, but which other people who took control of BTC artificially crippled and limited. And without the stance we took, the vision of Bitcoin that was created 10 years ago would not have survived, and this would not be possible. It's possible for a very simple reason. We're ensuring a stable protocol where developer groups don't muck around with the protocol that was set long ago, create stability for businesses as well as young developers to create great applications, and most importantly, scale, lifting restrictions and block size on the Bitcoin blockchain. If you do not scale big, you cannot achieve this vision. So we don't believe in small visions, we believe in big visions, and that's why this is happening. So let's take a quick historical review of why we haven't gotten here, and you'll understand the power of BSV as a result. So BTC is the ticker symbol I mentioned that is used to trade Bitcoin in most people's minds. We call it Bitcoin Core. Well, we don't think it's Bitcoin anymore because it's introduced a number of changes that deviate from the Satoshi white paper and vision. The biggest thing is scaling. For whatever reason, the BTC Core developer groups decided we're going to keep the block size on that Bitcoin network very small. Teeny tiny, itty bitty, 1 megabyte in size, which is very small. That's the size of like an image file you might take on your phone and email or text. It doesn't fit that many transactions. And because of that, the BTC network does, on average, 3 transactions a second, or at max 7 transactions a second. You cannot create a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system used by people in daily life to pay for everything around the world with teeny tiny blocks that only have that number of transactions a second. Because compare that to the global Visa network, which does on average 2,000 transactions a second, and at peak times such as holiday shopping season, 56,000 transactions a second. So what on earth were they thinking in keeping the block cap stuck at 1 tiny megabyte? It's ridiculous. And so our vision is very simple: unlimited scaling. I like big blocks because they allow us to do big things, which is why I say a lot, I like big blocks and I cannot lie. So that's really important because it means more than just I like big things. It has an impact on the usability of the network. So this is the BTC network. It's a chart from earlier this year showing what are called the unconfirmed transactions, the mempool. So this is what happens on the Bitcoin network. If the block size is really tiny, and I want to send, for example, Jack over there a transaction, and I send a transaction, but only so many can fit into a block. And the blocks get added, collecting transactions, on average about every 10 minutes onto the network. So if they can only fit so many transactions in a little block, and a lot of people are doing transactions around the world, what happens? The transactions sit and wait. They're unconfirmed transactions. They wait in something called the mempool. It's like going to the hospital and having far too many patients in the emergency room. What do? You got to sit in a waiting room. It's annoying. It's frustrating. But you can actually pay the miners who process and validate the transactions on the blockchain a higher fee to get your transaction in. And so if you want your transaction in sooner, it was causing huge fee spikes in the BTC network because transactions were sitting and waiting. So for example, on April 4th and May 17th of this year, you see those big spikes there. It was reaching about 50,000 unconfirmed transactions on the BTC network. That led to, over time, to huge spikes in transaction fees. In January of 2018, when there was the huge sort of crypto buying craze because of the sharp rise in Bitcoin's price at the time, the transaction volume went way up, so the fee hit almost $40 to send a single transaction on the BTC network. No one is going to use that as a daily electronic cash system. If you go to the grocery store to buy groceries and have to pay $40 just to make the Bitcoin transaction. And it's dropped a lot since then, but it's still too high. And more importantly, it's unreliable and unpredictable. And if you're a developer or business who wants to create an application where you need to send lots of Bitcoin transactions to power what you're doing, you need reliability in order to budget and plan what your business is like. So on May 29th on BTC, it was costing over $4 to send a BTC transaction. Then in I think June or so, it was about $1.40. Recently, it was about 40 cents. All of that's too high because you can't be powering billions of transactions. But more importantly, it's unpredictable. How are you ever supposed to know if you can build an application that requires lots of Bitcoin transactions to be sent if you don't know if the fee is going to be $4 per transaction or 40 cents or 4 cents? It's just not feasible. And so BTC has gone off on this different direction, creating an off-chain payment channel called the Lightning Network to try and do all of the transactions on top of the chain between merchants and customers and other people. We think that breaks Bitcoin's economic incentive model for reasons we don't need to get into today. But it leads to this new narrative that's being created in the BTC world. It's like, oh, we get it. Bitcoin, BTC can't really work as electronic cash. We know it's too slow and the fees are too high and it's unreliable. So you know what? It's just a store of value. It's digital gold. It's where you put large amounts of value and maybe periodically send a transaction once in a long while. Well, I'm sorry, folks. If you've studied Bitcoin, and you can just read the white paper or ask Craig yourself, Satoshi did not birth to the world Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer store of value system. He birthed to the world a system designed to be used in daily life as electronic cash. And the other blockchain projects are running into the same problem BTC is, scaling. So Ethereum, for a long time, people thought this is going to be the savior. This is going to be the thing that enterprises use to create smart contracts and tokens and every ICO named to man. Well, Vitalik Buterin has finally acknowledged publicly what we've all known behind the scenes for a long time. The Ethereum blockchain is almost full, and it is preventing new businesses from onboarding onto the chain. And they have a plan for an Ethereum 2.0 to help solve these, which we'll see how long that takes to come out. And it probably won't solve the problems. And so that's why Bitcoin SV exists. It uses the original Bitcoin design and protocol created long ago by Craig and released to the world, which had everything it needed to create a more powerful future. And it is doing so with a vision to massive scaling. Because on BSV, we can create a world of billions of Bitcoin transactions. You know why? Because our transaction fees are very low and reliable. So right now it costs less than 1/10 of 1 US cent to send a Bitcoin transaction on BSV. That's a payment transaction of low data size. Bigger data size may require a little bit more, but it's still very, very cheap. And that's still too high. We think that needs to be even fractions of that. So why is this possible? And why does this open the world for applications that allow micropayments and microtransactions of small amounts of money? It's because we believed in this. Satoshi's early writings, an email at the beginning year of Bitcoin, said there's only one global chain. And comparing Bitcoin at the time, this is in 2009, to the Visa network, said that Bitcoin never really hits a scale ceiling and could exceed Visa back then. So 10 years ago, the design of Bitcoin was sufficient in Satoshi's mind to exceed the Visa network's capacity. And Bitcoin was designed never to ever hit a scale ceiling. So you have to ask yourself, how do we end up with teeny tiny 1 megabyte blocks for all these years? And that is just a frustrating story. And it's why it's taken us so long to finally reclaim the original vision of Bitcoin and go down this road. We are going down a road to what we call Genesis, restoring fully the original Bitcoin protocol and letting it scale. So in July of this year, our development team released a significant protocol upgrade called Quasar, which is taking us on this road to Genesis. And mostly, it's about going with much bigger block capacity. So BTC remains at 1 megabyte block caps. Bitcoin Cash, which for a period of time we supported to go bigger, is still at 32 megabyte as a block cap. Our block cap now, after that Quasar upgrade, is 2 gigabytes. That's 2,048 megabytes, significantly larger than BTC. Now, the mining pools in BSV aren't mining at that size yet. They're letting the network sort of adapt to this much bigger block capacity. But we're still seeing very, very big blocks. So we're at 2 gigabytes, but a lot of the miners now are mining about 256 megabytes, which is still 250 times bigger than what's happening on the BTC network. And we're showing that Bitcoin can scale. For so long, developers were told, oh no, Bitcoin can't scale. That's why we need these tiny blocks. Well, we've seen already world record-sized blocks mined on Bitcoin SV. On July 28th of this year, 2 blocks hitting that 256 megabyte capacity were successfully mined on the network. It's gotten to the point where there's big blocks being mined with such regularity on BSV that it's boring. It's become non-eventful. So this is a block explorer, which marks in descending order on the far right column the biggest blocks mined so far on the Bitcoin SV network. So you can see at the top, it's essentially 256 megabytes, 256 megabytes, those 2 blocks I mentioned to you, and then 248, 248, 217, 210, 183, 148, and so far. And they keep coming to the point where it's boring now. It used to be, oh my God, it was a 200 megabyte block. That was monstrous. Now it's kind of like, yawn. I could do bigger. And so we're going to an approach, which is what Satoshi always envisioned. Remember, he wrote in 2009, it never really hits a scale ceiling. So come February of this year, with our Genesis upgrade, called Genesis, to restore Bitcoin's original design, there will be no limit on the block size. No limits. And what that means is the miners and mining pools that provide the computing power to power the blockchain and security, they'll decide based upon market forces and market demand. If there's a bigger demand for bigger data capacity, they'll meet it because they make money by doing so. And that's what was always intended. nChain's development team has been doing a lot of technical work to test the boundaries of scaling, to make sure this is all going to work. So they run a scaling test network, which on July 24th of this year successfully mined on the test network 12 consecutive blocks of that full 2 gigabyte size. So for all the years of being told Bitcoin can't scale, it needs tiny blocks, we're demonstrating on a daily basis that you can do 2 gigabyte blocks. And they did that, as I mentioned, 12 blocks of 2 gigabytes in a row, generating a lot higher fees for the miners, which is what is critical to sustain the profitability of Bitcoin mining in the years to come. And we're doing this also on the mainnet, the live net of the network. So there's a big BSV supporter in China who likes to run public stress tests. And on August 3rd of this year, he ran a test where he pumped 2 million individual transactions into the network within an hour, resulting in a 210 and 150 megabyte block with 800 and 700,000 individual transactions in each of those blocks. So we're proving the Bitcoin network can sustain high volumes of transactions at great pace, fast, and speed. But we dream even bigger because we really want to change the world. That's great for payments, but we want this to power a whole new data ledger. And we believe in a world of 1 terabyte size blocks, 1 million megabytes. And, and when we get there, you can do billions of transactions in each block at millions of transactions a second. So how are we faring? In the 11 months since Bitcoin SV emerged, this is a comparison chart of what's happening on the 3 main competing Bitcoin blockchains. You can see red, that's BSV. This is the daily average block size of each of the main networks. The red line is progressively going up, and we are going to be overtaking and have overtaken on certain days the yellow line, which is the BTC network's average block size. That's going to continue to increase. The number of transactions that go into the block, which is a key sign of usage, actually using the blockchain, as opposed to just buying Bitcoin and holding it and hoping to get rich. The average usage by number of transactions in a block is again on an increased line for the BSV network in red, and that's going to continue, and we think it's going to explode next year. It means we can create a data network with capacity sufficient for enterprise needs, not just crypto hobbyists mining at home. At 2 gigabyte blocks, you can do 14 to 9 or 9 to 14,000 transactions per second, housing maybe 5 to 8 million transactions within an individual block, depending on the size of the data for each of those transactions. It also means we're creating an ecosystem where Bitcoin SV meets the needs of major enterprises for their blockchain. I spend a lot of my time flying around the world, not just talking at events about BSV, but meeting with big businesses and talking to them about what is it that you need to actually build for an enterprise blockchain application. What's the platform you need? And these are the factors that we've summarized. A lot of it's pretty obvious. They want a lawful, not crypto-anarchist and dark system. They want a stable network and protocol. But the top two things are very important to them: a scalable network. Because if you are Amazon, if you are Walmart, if you are, let's say, a Tesco here in the United Kingdom, and you want to build a blockchain application, it's got to be for a lot of users and a lot of transactions. You need something scalable. And they also want low and predictable fees. Well, the only blockchain project that exists today that can meet all of those criteria is Bitcoin SV, because it was designed that way from the very beginning. And so that's how we get to this idea of the metanet. If we want the Bitcoin blockchain to be able to subsume and power the whole internet, you need lots of data capacity. You need to be able to manage millions, if not billions, of transactions that are happening of tiny amounts or tiny interactions for very low and predictable fees. That is critical, and that's also necessary for speed. I won't go into all the details of the protocol. You can ask Jess Davies about it after the program, but it essentially is an umbrella for the metanet. It structures, and in terms of a paradigm, how you have data that goes onto the chain that can be useful as well for accessing via the internet. He could explain to you it's a transaction protocol. It provides a particular structure for having a transaction on the blockchain. Write permission is controlled by digital signatures, which is a key element of the Bitcoin network. And read permission is controlled by encryption. So it's a way of structuring how you put all this data onto the blockchain so it's more easily found and used with internet services that will transform the internet. So now I'm going to conclude by talking about, well, what can you actually do with all this? This is all great in principle and in theory, but what's being created by developers and enterprises around the world? Well, a lot of powerful things. Because the transaction fee is so tiny on BSV, you can power a new world of micropayments and microtransactions. On the internet today, because we use credit cards, you notice that companies don't sell things that are less than a certain amount. In the United States, you're not going to buy anything on the internet for less than $1 or $2 because there's a minimum credit card processing fee associated with it. But what if that went away? What if it was only costing 1/10 of a cent to do a transaction? You could change the way the internet works. For example, newspapers are struggling to generate revenue in the online world, so they're starting to charge subscriptions, right, for their online access. So you have to pay by the month or by the year to read more than a certain number of free articles on a news site. Well, I hate paying for those annual subscriptions, but what if I could just pay per article I read or per blog post, 10 pence, 20 pence, that you could do with tiny microtransactions? What if you could pay, instead of for a whole video, for video content that you paid for by the minute or by the second, where the amounts are pulled automatically from your Bitcoin digital wallet in small amounts as far as you went along? What if you could pay to get past just key moments in a video? For in-game items and virtual items in games, instead of having to buy a bulk of tokens in advance with your credit card to deposit into account, what if you were just paying small amounts of Bitcoin for each of those individual items, as well as for social media interactions? In the time since BSV has emerged, we've seen this huge explosion of development as developers clued in and said, oh my goodness, this is the blockchain solving all of the problems that I had to confront on other chains. So in the time we've had BSV, there's now 267 projects, applications, and tools that have emerged around the world, creating utility on this chain. You see some of them here. There's 18 different protocol layers that people have come up with to try to organize this system. And this is something very important to understand. We're building a blockchain ecosystem where the coin and its network are used. We want utility. We're not building something for people to just get rich quick. We're building a network for use in the future. So what are some companies doing? Unisat is a company in Norway that is building an enterprise ERP and a blockchain management system for supply chain management. And it is using the BSV blockchain because of its greater data capacity to create an ERP system that will be integrated with the SAP software, which is very leading in the supply chain management field. In the game space, Chronoverse is a company in the United States which has decided to use the Bitcoin SV blockchain because other blockchain projects would not fulfill what it wanted to do. It has a game called Crypto Fights. It's a battle game, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons game, where you have different moves, you roll dice, your avatar does things, and you try to defeat the other player. Its plan is to use the BSV blockchain to record each of those battle moves as a separate data transaction to the chain so that it can be audited, verified, and reviewed in the future. Because in the esports world, people like to go back and watch prior games and battles, study them and analyze them, and it's going to create a battle explorer to allow people to do that. And it's going to feed lots of individual transactions to the BSV blockchain to create a new way of dealing with esports. That it's more fair, auditable, verifiable, including with the betting on esports that's emerging. Speaking of betting, BitBoss is another game company in the United States focused on gaming. And this is more in the land of casino gaming as well as online gambling. It also has chosen to use the Bitcoin SV blockchain to announce a new product called Bridge, which uses a token built on BSV to allow casino players to be able to fund digital wallets with BSV tokens and use them to play slot machines, as well as other machines in land casinos. Again, they needed a system, high transaction capacity, very cheap fees, and the ability to do tokens and smart contracts. One Store is the second largest mobile app store in South Korea. So it rivals the Google and Apple stores on mobile devices. It's preloaded into all Android devices in South Korea, therefore reaching a customer base of 35 million people in South Korea. It made a major announcement at our big Bitcoin SV conference in Seoul a couple of weeks ago, the CoinGeek conference, of the launch of this, BoostCon, a music content delivery platform built on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. What it does is allow a music artist, let's say you're a songwriter, to upload content to its mobile app BoostCon service, a music video, a song, and then if you're a fan and you're using this service to enjoy music, you pay as much as you want with a touch token that it's creating on the Bitcoin SV blockchain, which provides the love and touch to the artist. And more importantly, it solves a very important issue in the music world. As a lawyer, I can tell you it's very complicated to track all the music rights for a song and distribute the payment of royalties to everyone involved in writing a song. Sometimes there's like 5, 6, 7 people involved in writing a song. Well, in this system, once the user provides payment through a touch token to the music artist, you can set up digital wallets to automatically distribute the portions of revenue that each rights holder may have, the singer, the person who did the composition, people who did the instrumentation. So it automates the process of distributing music rights payments, which is a very useful tool. We're also creating something very important, what I call the earn and use economy. Cryptocurrency for too long has been in this weird world where you have to buy cryptocurrency on an exchange to then spend it, or most people just hold it, hoping to get rich. Well, that's not what money is. Money is something we earn and use throughout our daily lives and ecosystem. And we want that to happen on BSV. So yours.org is a social network based out of San Francisco in the United States, which is reinventing the ability for creators to earn money. Because if you're a blogger, you're really not earning money from your blog posts. You might run advertisements, but that's about it. Well, with BSV micropayments, you can actually earn money for your content. So for example, this woman posted pictures from her holiday in the Andes in Venezuela. And people can then tip her, or they can upvote her post so that it appears higher in the feed. Small amounts. You could see here 19 cents, 10 cents, 4 cents, which are all possible because Bitcoin SV is so cheap and fast to transact. You can do a 5-cent payment because the transaction fee is so low. Twetch is a company with a team dispersed across the world, which is trying to reinvent social media. So right now, one of the problems with social media is that you can create anonymous accounts. There's lots of online trolls we see, for example, in the political world and definitely in the crypto world as well. Well, you can do that because it's free to create a Twitter account or a Facebook account. But what if you actually had to pay to post? It's a way to encourage higher quality content, cut some of the crap, frankly, out of social media and clean it up. So with Twitch, you create an account, and you can see here I tested it saying, hello, nice to speak with you today about Bitcoin SV. And it would cost me 2 cents in Bitcoin SV to post that message. So why would I do that? Well, because in exchange, I can earn money back. So here's a picture I posted when I was with the Twitch team in Berlin a few weeks ago after a big workshop they did. And people liked my post back. And there's 13 nice little hearts there. And every time someone likes or replies to my post, they pay me a small amount of money. So you could see here, the total I have up there, I've only tested this sometimes. I've done 17 Twitches and earned a total of $20.21. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing over $1 average per Twitch. So imagine, though, taking this to a higher level. If you become an influencer, if you're the Kim Kardashian of Cambridge University Bitcoin, you could have lots of pictures that earn you a lot of money in a way that influencers can't earn now. It's a way of reinventing and encouraging higher quality on the internet in a new metanet world powered by BSV transactions. And so that's really unique. There's already a competing product in China called Weeblock, which essentially does the same thing. And then in the video world, Streamanity is a company we work with because Calvin Ayers invested in them, which is essentially reinventing the YouTube experience on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. So as a creator on YouTube, creators make no money on YouTube. Very few creators reach the user fan level necessary to be able to generate revenue on YouTube. But you can post videos, including videos of some of our team you could see here, and then you can set prices for however you want to charge for your video. Charge by the minute, charge by the second, charge after a certain period of time, and then they split the revenue with you. BitcoinFiles.org is essentially like Dropbox on the BSV blockchain. Upload content to the blockchain, you pay to upload it, but then you can charge other people for accessing it if it's content other people want to access. And so it creates whole new business models. Bitco.media is similar for that. Uptime SV is a project that won our first ever Bitcoin SV hackathon. And it's really taken advantage of the idea of earning and using Bitcoin. And it does so very, very creatively. All of us have mobile devices now, and your mobile device has idle computing power. You're not using it at any given amount of time. Well, it's used this to create a crowdsourced way of monitoring websites up and downtime, which is something companies pay for. They pay services to monitor website up and downtime. And so with Uptime SV, you can download a mobile application and elect to provide the idle computing power of your mobile phone, which is also moving at all times, so providing more accurate geolocation data, to help companies test whether their websites are accessible where you are. And in exchange, you get paid small amounts of BSV on an ongoing, continuous basis. So it's creating new uses for mobile applications. And another example like this is Tonic Power does something similar with digital advertising. You can put ads onto your websites and then earn BSV back. City on Chain is a project out of China, which is creating a Craigslist type of experience, localizing information, and again, creating payment opportunities for when you provide a review of a local restaurant, when you provide content that might be useful to someone and then you get paid back in BSV. And so the final thing I'll end with is something that I think will be very interesting from a research perspective for people at universities like this and others around the world, which is the rise of big data and artificial intelligence on the BSV blockchain. We're seeing a wave of applications such as Uptime SV that are streaming large volumes of data of different types. Well, think about the data Uptime SV will be putting onto the blockchain. Information about when websites are accessible at different parts of the world. That provides, on a public blockchain, a whole store, a universal store of data that can be accessed by lots of companies for their big data analysis so that everyone can be using it. Weather SV is one of the highest generating transaction applications for BSV. People open weather channels and feed weather data, let's say of here in Cambridge, on an ongoing basis to the blockchain. So it's permanently accessible later. When people access it, they pay the channel owner. Well, that allows the ability for the blockchain to house weather data from all around the world that could be used for big data analytics. And giving the innate computing powers of the Bitcoin blockchain and scripting language can one day turn the Bitcoin network into the source of AI functionality using all of this data that's being fed onto the blockchain. Rate SV is a company out of China doing something similar with financial data, stock prices, cryptocurrency prices, futures prices, bond prices from all over the world, providing it in one place, the blockchain, that everyone can access. And so it's a really interesting thing to do. There's a company in Japan doing the same thing with earthquake detection devices affixed to buildings that they're testing on the BSV blockchain to record to the BSV blockchain the measurements related to a building and predicting where the earthquakes might be coming. That again provides a wealth of information and data that could be used for AI. So all of this is possible because we believe in Bitcoin's original vision, what Craig designed when he birthed Bitcoin to the world. It is what, if you step back and open your mind to it, makes you realize, Bitcoin was far more than just a monetary new system. It was a technology platform that had the capacity to change the world, and it still does. And I think it is an incredibly exciting time to be thinking about this, to be understanding the full power of Bitcoin and the Metanet, just as Robin and a lot of people he works with here are doing on a daily basis. So I would encourage all of you who are the bright young minds at Cambridge or from wherever you've come from today to really think about this future, this ability to work on something that is not just research or interesting, but has the ability to change the world in ways we can't even imagine, and probably are ways that you all can dream of far better than us. I can't wait to see those ideas, and I can't wait to see all of the exciting developments that will come out of the Cambridge Metanet Society, and I wish you to say, we choose SV.